Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here and sticking around. You're in the final stretch of today's program. I just have to say what a great opportunity you all have taken here today and taken advantage of. And I do hope that you do leave here as inspired enough to take action at your respective schools. You've heard a lot of good speakers and a lot of good information, particularly with regards to Christina's speech. Even though the talk was directed towards you, the youth, and our leaders of tomorrow, I actually was re-inspired by her and ACE's thoughtful and mission and what it has been able to accomplish over the past couple of years. Her message and her stories of students taking action is what will continue to motivate me in my mission and in my own work towards a healthier and cleaner environment for the future. I'm so pleased to be here today, and to share my own message, because it is long overdue, and it is the youth of your generation who's going to change things around and make it a better place. Are you ready to hear something new and a bit different? My name is Christine Lenches-Hinkel, and I did found a company called Wasteless Living several years back, and we are all about the trash. We're all about the waste we generate in our society. And I'm here to reveal to you some very shocking and eye-opening information and statistics about trash and how it's directly connected to our health and overall well-being. Kind of a big stretch and connection, I know, but hopefully through the slides and the pictures I'm presenting, it'll make that connection very clear in the end. Hence the title, Why All the Fuss About Trash? My message ties very nicely with Christina's in that we have a choice around living large. When we come to learn how living large is actually a detriment to our own well-being. I'll share with you some statistics about all the waste we generate as a society, but more importantly, I'm going to explain to you how landfills work and how they negatively impact our air, our water, our soil resources. Because landfills are is the place where the majority of our waste goes. And not many people know how landfills operate. And then at the end, I'm going to bring it all together and make the connections between trash, between the environment, and our health. And it's not just about clean air and clean water. It's about clean and healthy soil. The best part is that you can start making a positive impact on our environment now, tomorrow, or the next time you go shopping, or even eat out. And I'll also list some things you can do today, tomorrow, and the next time, so that you can help curb global warming. And it's all in the way that we buy and shop. So, let's talk trash. We clearly generate way too much of it. This is probably the typical image of what you might think a landfill is. Piles and piles and piles of trash and stuff just dumped off somewhere far enough away that we don't really see it or even think about it. We routinely take out our trash out of our homes, we place it on curbside, and then wait for our waste trucks to come by and whisk it off in seconds, leaving us with an empty trash can just to fill up for the next week. In partnership with the trash haulers, we here have perfected the process and have done quite a successful job of keeping it out of our homes and streets clean of garbage. However, in some cases, there is the residual litter and debris that doesn't quite make it into our trash cans or even our recycling bins. And when that happens, the trash ends up here, our oceans. Well, you ask, well, how? How is that the case? Well, we have a convenient storm drain system, that's built right into our roadways, and they're quite efficient at transporting all that loose litter that escaped our trash and recycling containers. And they're all built like conveyor systems, though this was not their intended purpose. So this isn't a very good scenario, so to speak. We're actually polluting our waterways with our trash, and that ultimately affects and impacts the marine life, which is basically a food source for all of us. The marine life end up basically consuming the bits of plastic and film floating in the ocean, thinking it's food, and they are ultimately depleted of the nutrients they need for survival and reproduction. Basically, when marine life suffer, we suffer. Here's a statistic that reveals how much we Americans generate in trash. According to Recycle America, Americans represent 5% of the world's population, yet we generate 30% of the world's garbage. It's a huge number, all because we're living large. This statistic is a testament to our throwaway society and our consumptive habits. Clearly, our society is generating too much trash, and our infrastructure is not able to handle it anymore. And the question is, where does it all go? Well, you may already know this. It goes to a landfill, it goes to a dump, and yes, some to a recycling center, but only 31% is actually recovered from the waste stream. The remaining volume actually gets burned, 14%, but the majority, 55%, is going to the landfill. Not to mention that what we do send to the recycling centers requires a large amount of power and energy to turn those materials back into something that we will buy again on the shelves at the store. In more simplistic terms around this particular graph, if you think of 10 pieces of trash, 3 pieces would get recycled, 1 piece would get burned, and the remaining 6 pieces would get trashed to a landfill. The problem is not so much that we're not doing such a good job of recycling, though we could definitely do better. The problem is more about what the landfills are doing to our environment. But because they're so far away and we don't think about it much, we don't learn about it. Okay, well, what's so bad about landfills? Why all the fuss? Well, they're facilities that are kept out of sight and out of mind. They're engineered facilities. And they sometimes don't look so bad. Engineers and planners have done quite a good job of planning for what they look like, much like this one up here on the screen. It's an actual aerial picture of Shoal Canyon Landfill in the city of Glendale, which is right next door to where we live, Pasadena-Altadena area, and only a few miles away from the Rose Bowl Stadium. If you can see right on the right-hand side, that oval-shaped object is actually the Rose Bowl Stadium. Clearly, just by comparison, landfills take up a large amount of space. You can probably count how many Rose Bowl stadiums can fit into that one landfill, the footprint. But it's not the space that's really the issue either. It's the volume of waste we're generating that drives the need for such large tracts of land to basically store it all, because it's not going away. Not to mention what's happening inside the landfill that is of dire concern. And when you find out in the next couple of slides I'm going to show you, you're not going to want to throw anything in the trash anymore. At least I hope not. So what exactly is happening in a landfill? Well, you can think of a landfill like one giant big plastic trash bag filled with hundreds of thousands of trash bags filled with lots of really good stuff, like food scraps and paper waste, containers, recyclable containers, hair, lint, cotton t-shirts, anything we don't want anymore. That's all the stuff we put in these bags, right? Well, imagine that landfills are built on the same premise as a typical trash bag, merely to contain all the nuisance materials and liquids inside to prevent it from being scattered and leaking everywhere. This slide on the right-hand side shows you a cross-section of a typical landfill with all these trash bags contained in it. You see the green polygons there. The black line represents the plastic liner to keep all the liquids and materials inside and to prevent the liquids from coming into contact with the soil. Okay? Just like I said, thinking of it as a gigantic trash bag filled with other trash bags. Well, when engineered this way, you're basically creating a closed system, much like tying off the trash bag at home. You're keeping all the stuff inside, securely contained, and at the same time, you're keeping things out of the bag. The problem with such a closed system, as is the case with landfills, is that the materials are breaking down under anaerobic conditions. Okay, big word, anaerobic, basically meaning in the absence of oxygen. Remember, the trash bags have been sealed off as well, and little, if any, oxygen is available for natural biodegradation to occur. Because what are we talking about? Biological resources breaking down the materials inside. Biological resources being worms and bacteria and fungi that do the work. But they can't live in an oxygen-depleted environment. So when materials decompose without oxygen, methane gas is actually being produced, which is a greenhouse gas. Here's that connection to the environment. And methane gas is known to be over 20 times more potent than carbon dioxide or CO2, which is a greenhouse gas affecting global warming, going back to Christina's talk. Now, the engineers and planners were well aware of this scenario as they've installed methane gas recovery systems. If you see the vertical piping down the middle of the landfill to recover that methane. They've also installed leachate recovery systems to collect all of the liquids that are pooling at the bottom of the landfill. Another not so well known byproduct of the landfills is this toxic wastewater called leachate. This stuff pools, like I had mentioned, at the bottom, but then it does get siphoned out, much like a straw, to be treated above ground in that black depression over there as well, treated to a level where it can be discharged into our local waterways. The challenge has been in keeping the standards, the water quality standards, high enough to protect public health. And any given year, those water quality standards can change, depending on who's lobbying. Similarly, the engineers have planned for this byproduct as well. They know this is happening in the landfill. What they haven't gotten control over is the leakage factor of the landfills. Imagine the toxicity of that leachate or wastewater eating away at the bottom liner, ultimately to seep down into the soils and ultimately down into the groundwater or aquifers. So not only are we trying to protect the above ground surface waters, but this system is not quite doing its job of protecting the groundwater. According to our own Environmental Protection Agency, which is our federal agency tasked with regulating our natural resources and protecting our air, water, and soils, they report that about 86% of all US landfills actually leak. And they're leaking toxic materials into lakes and streams and aquifers. And once the groundwater is contaminated, it is extremely expensive and difficult, sometimes even impossible, to clean up. So clearly, we have to wean ourselves off of our dependency on landfills and our trash cans. And the aha moment here is that there is another way. And this part of the presentation will help connect the dots and why there is an aha moment here. How many of you are familiar with composting? Okay, great, so you know a little bit about what I'm talking about. It's basically turning your food scraps and paper and garden waste back into soil for planting crops, planting food. Oops, sorry. Okay, well, when you throw your food scraps away into the trash, like you typically would, you know, at a venue such as this, if we didn't have the Wasteless Living stations up, you'd think it just disappears and turns back into soil in a landfill, right? It's biodegradable, compostable material, and it'll just turn back into compost in a landfill. The majority of people wouldn't have a second thought about it and assume so, that it'll just go away. You're dumping it into the ground, yes. It's outside, it's being rained on, it's under the sun and heating up. Well, not exactly. You're dumping it into a large plastic bag, which is a closed system and sealed. The microbes that do that work, they're living in the soils. How are they going to get to all that wonderful material inside the trash bag? And they need that food source. They need oxygen. They need sun. They need moisture to survive themselves. But we're sealing them off inside of a trash bag without the oxygen and all the other inputs. So really, landfills are not considered composting facilities, and you'll never get nutrient-enriched soil out of a landfill. The other aha piece to share is that all the good stuff we send to the landfills, like food scraps and paper and green waste, it's being utterly wasted. Rather than using this material to make healthy soil and compost for food production, we're feeding it to the landfills to fuel all of its byproducts, like the methane gas and like the leachate, which ultimately impacts our air and our water resources. So really, we're losing a valuable resource and turning it into something toxic rather than something actually beneficial for us. What is even more disturbing in this scenario is that without producing compost, we have little to build our soil base up to grow the crops we need to live on. Without a healthy soil base from which plants can take up the nutrients as they grow from the ground, our farmers are relying much more heavily on chemicals and fertilizers to artificially grow those plants. And of course, because we ingest these plants that have been treated with chemicals, we're ingesting those same inputs. But all is not lost. By transitioning away from landfills to a more sustainable model of resource recovery, like what we're doing here, and processing such as composting, we can go far to protect our air and our water, our soil resources, and be on a more sustainable path for our future. We just have to start changing our perception of the stuff, that stuff up there, and start seeking out the valuable materials that are in it to produce this stuff, good, healthy soil and compost. Even more good news is that it's happening already. Change is happening. People are adopting this practice. And it's merely a matter of education, 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 and a commitment to do the right thing at all cost. Like these schools in the Pasadena area, they're separating their waste stream. They're recovering the organics, the food scraps, the paper waste, the soiled papers, everything else, the cardboard. They've learned the value of the waste they throw away. It's no longer waste, really, but a valuable resource. Here, they're actually weighing and documenting the compostable materials they collect each day and sorting. They know exactly how much trash they send to the landfills, how much they're generating in recyclables, and how much they're generating in compostable waste. Gives them a goal to go after, which is really a zero waste goal. Their goal is zero waste, and on a good day, they've been able to get their trash load down to 8%. Now compare that with what we know now of 55% going to the landfills. And they achieved that within just 1 month. They're making a difference and in a big way, and schools have the capacity to do this. Here's another school, yours truly, Avison Charter School in Altadena, Avison School of Leaders, that followed suit and is now monitoring their waste stream and trying to recover their organics for composting. They're taking the time to monitor, to weigh, to record, to analyze, and report on their efforts. We just recently visited the composting facility, the commercial composting facility, where all their waste, or not waste, but their organic material is going to be turned back into this stuff. And each and every student was able to get a sample of this compost to take back to the school that they will then add to their gardens. And the story goes on. So get out there and do something about it. Reduce your own waste. Look at your own carbon footprint and learn more about composting and waste reduction. I invite you to do some research and find out ways your school can first and foremost reduce the waste it sends to the landfill. Find out how you can pack a zero-waste lunch. You can say no to the plastic baggies and opt for wax paper. You can find out how to compost, how to grow your own food in your own backyard. Better yet, start a gardening program and grow your food at your own school. Start saying no to certain items, particularly the plastic baggies. There are alternatives, like wax paper. Start saying no to the plastic water bottle, not necessary. Everybody's got a reusable water bottle now. Tell your friends to do the same. Go for the real fruit over the packaged sliced apples and those fruit chewies. There's a way to eat much healthier for yourself. Make your own trail mix over granola bars that are packaged in, foil and plastic. That's just going to get landfilled. You have reusable containers. Make yourself a medley. Choose paper over plastic. Paper is a renewable resource. We can plant more trees. There are organizations planting more trees. If you compost in your backyard, pick the paper over the plastic at the grocery store and compost the bag at home. There's lots you can do. Again, my passion is composting. Learn how to compost. Once you learn it, share your ideas, have a composting party, bring your friends over, dig through the compost, plan a zero waste day at your school, or do your own solid waste audit, and you'll be quite impressed with what you can achieve. And of course, there's lots you can do on your own. Again, I just encourage you to do the research, contact us, but think more about the waste. It's no longer out of sight, out of mind. And with that, I'll end. Thank you very much.